Snowflakes fell gently from the gray sky, covering the village in a thick white blanket. The wind was sharp and cruel, cutting through the silence like a knife. Most people stayed inside their warm homes. Fires crackled in stoves. Children peeked through frosted windows. But one person walked alone on the icy street. Her name was Rena. She was only 13. Her small feet were bare, red from the cold, leaving tiny footprints in the snow. Her dress was thin and torn, and she held a small cloth bag close to her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But her eyes looked tired, not just from the cold, but from the weight of life. As she walked past the bakery, a man inside pointed. A woman near the well whispered to her neighbor. "That's the thief's daughter," she said. "Did you hear what she did?" "I heard she tried to steal a chicken last week," another added. "She's cursed," said a third voice. "Her mother died in the snow. Her father disappeared. Bad blood runs in her." Rena heard it all, but she kept walking, her head down, her lips trembling from the cold. Then, near the village square, a shadow blocked her path. A large man with rough hands and an angry face stepped in front of her. He wore a thick brown coat and had a long beard covered in snow. He was the village woodsman, known as Garen. "Where do you think you're going, little rat?" he growled. Rena looked up, eyes wide with fear. I'm just passing by." Garen laughed harshly. "Passing by or looking to steal again? You think we don't remember what your kind does?" "I didn't steal," Rena whispered. "I swear." Before she could finish, Garen grabbed her arm tightly. She gasped in pain. A small crowd began to gather. People came out of shops and homes, curious about the noise. Some laughed, some just watched. "She's trouble," someone muttered. "She should be thrown out of the village," said another. Rena's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't fight. She didn't scream. She just stood there, frozen in more ways than one. "You're trash," Garen said coldly. "Just like your father." Then, suddenly, a calm voice broke through the icy air. "Don't touch her." The voice was not loud, but it was clear, strong, steady. Everyone turned. A man stood at the edge of the crowd. He wore a long black coat dusted with snow. A leather book was tucked under his arm. His face was kind, but serious. He had just arrived in the village weeks ago. It was the new pastor. He stepped forward slowly, his boots crunching on the snow. His eyes locked on Garen's. "I said," the pastor repeated. "Let her go." Garen stared at him. "This is none of your business, preacher." "She's a child," the pastor said, "and you're hurting her. That makes it my business." The crowd went quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. For a moment, no one moved. Rena looked at the pastor with confusion. She didn't know him. No one had ever defended her like this before. Why would he? Garen's grip tightened, then slowly loosened. He pushed Rena away roughly. "Fine," he muttered. "Take her. But don't come crying when she steals from your church." He turned and walked away. The crowd slowly began to scatter, but whispers remained. The pastor knelt beside Rena. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her lips were blue from the cold. "Come," he said gently. "Let's get you warm." Rena hesitated. She had learned not to trust anyone, but something in the man's eyes told her he meant it. She followed him, step by slow step, as snow continued to fall around them. But behind a window, Garen watched. His eyes were full of anger, and deep inside the church the fire was lit. But so was something else. A mystery had just begun. Who was this girl, really? And why did her presence make the village so cruel? More importantly, why had the pastor stepped in? To the villagers, it was just a poor girl. To the pastor, it was something more, something that no one in the village was ready for. The church was quiet. Only the sound of crackling fire could be heard. Rena sat near it, wrapped in a warm wool blanket. Her fingers trembled as she held a steaming cup of soup. She hadn't tasted real food in days, maybe weeks. The pastor, whose name was Brother Elias, watched her from across the room. He didn't ask questions right away. He just waited, calm and patient, letting her feel safe. "You can sleep here tonight," he finally said softly. "No one will bother you." Rena looked at him unsure. "Why are you helping me?" Brother Elias smiled, gently. "Because no one else did." Tears filled Rena's eyes, but she quickly wiped them. She didn't want to cry in front of him. She had cried enough alone. Later that evening, while Rena slept in the small back room, Elias walked outside the church. The snow had stopped, but the night was still freezing. He saw Garen standing near the well, arms crossed, waiting. "You should have stayed out of it," Garen said without turning. "She's just a girl," Elias replied calmly. "She's done nothing wrong." "You don't know what she's done," Garen snapped. "Her family's no good. Her father was a thief. Her mother begged and lied to everyone. Now she walks around like a ghost stealing scraps. You're making a mistake." Elias stepped closer. His voice lowered but stayed strong. "What you did today wasn't justice. It was cruelty." Garen's jaw tightened. "You protect her, she'll make a fool of you." The pastor leaned in slightly. "And if you or anyone lays a hand on her again, you'll answer to me." The air between them grew cold again, not from the snow but from the weight of Elias's words. Garen didn't reply. He simply turned and walked off into the night. The next morning, Rena awoke to the smell of bread. She opened her eyes slowly, not knowing where she was. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream, but it wasn't. She sat at a small table, eating warm bread and eggs. Brother Elias sat nearby reading a book. "You don't have to be afraid here," he told her gently. "People hate me," Rena said, voice barely a whisper. "They think I'm bad." Elias closed his book. "Do you believe that?" She looked down. "No, but I don't blame them. I don't have anyone. I don't belong here." "You belong wherever there is kindness," Elias said, "and this church is a place for kindness." Rena looked at him, her eyes full of something he hadn't seen before, hope. But outside, not everyone shared that feeling. At the bakery, in the market, in the village square, people began to talk. "Why is the pastor letting that girl stay?" "She's trouble. She'll rob the church. She should be sent away before she curses the rest of us." The gossip grew louder, angrier, and that afternoon, when Elias walked through the village for supplies, people stared. Some whispered, others turned away. One woman stopped him. "You're risking your reputation, Pastor. This village doesn't need her." Elias looked at her calmly. "Maybe what this village needs is to remember how to care." She didn't reply, just walked away, frowning. That evening, someone knocked on the church door. It was a thin man in his 60s, wearing a worn brown coat. "My name is Thomas," he said quietly. "I used to know her father." Elias invited him in. Thomas sat down and told Elias what no one else would. "Rena's father wasn't a thief," he began. "He worked hard. He helped me build fences. He only took food once, from Garen's barn, when his wife was dying and Rena had no milk." Elias's eyes narrowed. "And Garen blamed him?" Thomas nodded. "Said he was stealing for profit. Got the villagers to believe it. Drove him out. No one's seen him since." "Why? Are you telling me this now?" Elias asked. Thomas looked ashamed. "Because you're the first person to care." Elias sat in silence for a moment. Now the picture was becoming clear. Rena was not the problem. The village's silence was. Later that night, as Rena slept, Elias stood by the church window. Snow fell again, soft but steady. He looked out toward the village lights and whispered to himself, "They fear what they don't understand. But I will not fear her. I will protect her." But he knew something dark was coming. He had stood up to Garen once. He might have to do it again. By morning, the storm had passed. Snow still covered the streets, but the sky was clear and blue. Inside the old church, Rena helped sweep the wooden floor. She didn't say much, but she worked quietly and carefully, like she was trying to earn her place. Brother Elias watched her with a soft smile. You don't have to do this, he told her gently. Rena paused. I want to. You're the only who didn't look at me like I was trash. Elias said nothing for a moment. Then he simply nodded. All right, but promise me one thing. She looked up. If anyone tries to hurt you again, tell me. Rena hesitated, then gave a small nod. I promise. But outside, the whispers were getting louder. At the village well, near the bakery, and behind locked doors, people spoke, with fear and anger. She's cursed. She brings bad luck. First her mother dies, then her father disappears. Now they blamed Rena for things no child could control. Even the baker's wife, who once gave Rena an old coat, said, she brings the cold wherever she goes. Some villagers gathered in the tavern that evening. Garen sat in the corner, watching them argue. She shouldn't stay in the church. She's dangerous. She'll steal from the offering box. Finally, Garen stood. If the pastor won't send her away, maybe we should make him. The room went quiet. No one said it out loud, but in their silence they agreed. Meanwhile, inside the church, Rena had a strange feeling. She stood at the window looking out into the snow. I don't think they want me here, she whispered. Brother Elias walked up beside her. People fear what they don't understand, but truth is stronger than fear. And you carry truth. Inside you. Rena looked up at him. But what if they come back? What if they hurt you too? Elias put a hand on her shoulder. Then I will stand beside you. You're not alone anymore. For the first time in years, Rena believed those words. That night, something strange happened. Rena woke suddenly. It was still dark. She heard a noise, soft footsteps outside the church. She got out of bed, walked slowly to the front doors, and peeked out through the side window. A figure was there. She gasped. It was a man in a long coat. Not Garen. Someone thinner, slouched. He stood in the snow, just staring at the church. He didn't move, didn't knock, didn't speak. Rena backed away, heart pounding. She rushed to wake Elias. By the time they returned to the window, the man was gone. Who was it? She asked, voice shaking. I don't know, Elias said slowly. But you did the right thing. Next time, wake me sooner. But Elias didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, the whispers turned into plans. A small group of villagers gathered near Garen's barn, men with tired eyes and cold hearts. She needs to go. If Elias won't give her up, we'll force him. Garen nodded. Let's remind the pastor who really runs this village. That night, as Rena lit candles in the church, Elias prepared his sermon for Sunday. The wind howled outside like a warning. Then, a knock, hard, sharp, angry. Elias opened the church doors and saw 6 men standing in the snow. Garen was in front, holding a shovel like a weapon. Elias stepped outside, closing the door gently behind him. What do you want? He asked calmly. We want the girl out, Garen growled. Tonight. She's a child, Elias said. She's a curse, Garen shouted. She's poison, Elias. You're blind if you can't see it. Elias didn't move. If you harm her, you harm this church, and you'll answer for it. Garen stepped forward. You're making a mistake. This is your last chance. Then, Elias said something no one expected. Then do it. Burn the church, break its walls. Destroy its roof, but you won't break me, and you won't touch her. A silence fell over the group. They weren't ready for his strength, weren't ready for the fire in his voice. Garen clenched his fists but didn't swing. Something in Elias's eyes made him stop. The group slowly stepped back. One by one, they disappeared into the snow. That night, Elias sat by the fire. Rena sat beside him, eyes wide. Will they come back? She asked. Elias looked at the flames. Maybe. But I won't run, and neither will you. He handed her a book. It's time you learn more than just fear. Rena looked at the cover. Hope in the darkest night. She smiled for the first time in days, but deep down she knew. The storm wasn't over. Morning came with gray clouds and biting wind. The village looked peaceful under the blanket of snow, but something darker was growing. Behind closed doors, Inside the church, Rena helped light the morning candles. She moved carefully, still shaken from the night before. "Pastor Elias," she asked softly, "why do they hate me?" Elias looked up from his Bible. His eyes were kind but heavy with sadness. "Not everyone hates you, child. But fear makes people blind." Rena nodded slowly, but her heart still hurt. She had seen it in their faces, disgust, anger, even fear, like she was some kind of monster. But she didn't understand why. She had never harmed anyone. Elias put a hand on her shoulder. "I know. You don't remember much about your family, but would you like to try? Sometimes remembering helps us find the truth." Rena looked at the wooden floor, thinking hard. "I remember a warm room, someone humming, a smell like cinnamon, and a voice, a woman's voice, soft and kind. Her voice broke. Then fire, shouting, and then nothing." Elias stayed quiet. He knew that trauma could bury memories deep, like snow hiding something beneath the surface. Later that afternoon, Rena went outside to gather firewood. She wore an old coat Elias had found, too big for her thin frame. Her fingers stung from the cold, but she tried to be brave. Suddenly, a soft sound made her stop. Crunch. Snow. Underboots. She turned quickly. A figure stood behind a tree at the edge of the graveyard, watching her. "Who's there?" she called out, heart racing. The figure didn't answer, just stepped back and disappeared into the woods. Rena dropped the firewood and ran back to the church. Inside, she told Elias everything. "A man," she said breathlessly. "He was watching me again." Elias frowned deeply. "That's the second time. It might not be Garen or the villagers." Rena leaned forward. "Then who?" Elias hesitated. "Someone from your past?" That night, Elias stayed up, hidden, in the shadows, waiting with a lantern by the window. Midnight. The wind howled. Then, movement. A figure approached the church slowly. This time, Elias opened the door before the stranger could knock. "Stop," he commanded. The man froze in the snow. He wore a torn cloak, and his face was hidden under a hood. "You've been watching her," Elias said sternly. "Why?" Man didn't answer, but he reached into his coat slowly and pulled out an old, faded photograph. Elias took a step forward, wary. He looked at the photo. His eyes widened. It was Rena, a younger version of her, smiling, sitting beside a man. With kind eyes and dark hair, the hooded man finally spoke, his voice cracking. "She's my daughter." Elias stepped back in shock. "She was lost," the man said. "After the fire, I thought she died." Rena, who had crept behind Elias to see what was happening, gasped loudly. "Papa?" The man fell to his knees. In the snow, tears ran down his weathered face. "I never stopped searching," he whispered. Elias looked at the photo again, then at Rena. There was no doubt. It was her. The moment felt frozen in time. The cold air held its breath. But behind the church in the darkness, another shadow moved. Garen. He had followed the man, hoping to catch something. What he saw shook him to the core, and what he planned next would change everything. Back inside, Rena and her father embraced for the first time in years. Elias stood beside them, grateful but concerned. "You can stay here tonight," he told the man. "But the village won't be happy. They already fear her." The man nodded. "Let them, I will protect her now." But Elias knew the danger hadn't passed. It was only getting closer. And the truth about the fire, that night, Rena couldn't sleep. She kept watching her father, lying quietly on the wooden bench beside the church stove. He looked so tired, so broken, but also peaceful now that he had found her. "Is it real?" she whispered to herself. "Is he really my papa?" Her heart said yes, but her mind was full of questions. Outside, the snow had stopped, but the cold had not. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Pastor Elias, in the back room, lit a small candle and opened an old wooden box. Inside were church records, letters, and something he hadn't shown anyone, a burned piece of cloth. It had once belonged to Rena, found years ago near the edge of the forest where the fire had taken her home. Elias had always suspected there was more to the fire, but he had no proof, until now. Suddenly there was a knock, hard, fast, angry. Rena jumped. Her father sat up quickly. Elias opened the door, and there stood Garen, the woodcutter, with 2 men behind him. "We want her out," he growled. "We won't say it again." Elias stood firm. "This is a church. She is under my protection." Garen stepped forward, voice rising. "She brings trouble. She's cursed. And now her father. Where? Was he all these years? Hiding or planning something?" Rena's father stood beside Elias, chest rising with anger. "I searched for her every day. I lost everything in that fire, my home, my wife, my baby girl. Don't talk to me about hiding." But Garen wasn't listening. He pointed at Rena. "She caused the fire. She's the reason her family died." "Ask anyone," gasps spread among the men. Rena froze in shock. "What?" she whispered. I did? No!" her father shouted. "She was only 5. It wasn't her." Elias raised his hands. "Enough," his voice echoed in the cold air. "Spreading lies will not heal this village." But Garen wasn't finished. He stepped forward, looked right at Rena, and said, "I saw you that night." Silence fell. Elias's hands dropped. "What do you mean?" he asked slowly. Garen's face twisted. "I was in the woods. I saw the fire. I saw her standing there, watching the house burn." Rena's eyes filled with tears. No, I didn't." Her father dropped to his knees beside her. "You didn't, Rena. You didn't." But Garen smiled coldly. "I remember your face and the fire in your eyes." Rena shook her head. Again and again. "I didn't do it," she whispered. "I don't remember it that way." Then suddenly, a memory returned. Not clearly, but like a soft whisper in the wind. She remembered the kitchen. Her mother was baking. Her father had gone outside. She had picked up a candle, and then a strong hand grabbed her, smoke screaming. Flames. Someone had started the fire, but it wasn't her. Her breathing quickened. There was someone else. Garen's face changed. He stepped back. "You're lying," he snapped. Elias narrowed his eyes. "You were there, weren't you?" The other villagers looked at Garen. "Wait. You never told us that," one of them said. "You said you only heard the fire," said another. Garen's voice trembled. "I didn't do anything. I just saw her. That's all." But his hands were shaking. Rena looked at him, tears still on her cheeks, but her voice was steady now. "You were there when my mother screamed." Her father stood slowly. "What did you do?" he asked Garen. Garen turned and ran. The other men followed him into the night, shouting. Inside the church, Elias closed the door, his face pale. Rena stood still. Her father held her. "She's starting to remember," Elias said softly. "And I think the truth is darker than we knew." The candle flickered, and outside, somewhere in the snow. The village was not quiet the next morning. Garen was gone. He had disappeared into the forest before sunrise. Some said he was running. Others said he had gone mad. But no one knew the truth. Inside the small church, Rena sat by the warm fire, with a blanket around her shoulders. Her father sat nearby, holding an old photo of his wife. His eyes were tired, full of pain, but also full of something else now. Hope. Pastor Elias stood near the window looking out into the snow. "He knows something," Elias said quietly. "That's why he ran." Rena nodded slowly. "I remember more now. I was holding a candle, yes, but someone pushed me. The fire didn't start by accident." Her voice shook. "I saw boots, big ones, and a green coat." Her father looked up. "That was Garen's coat. He wore it every winter." Elias turned around, his voice serious. "Then we must find him before he disappears for good." But Rena's father shook his head. "He won't go far. Men like Garen run, but they always return. Their guilt pulls them back. Just then, the church door opened, and a young woman stepped inside. Her name was Lana, a villager, quiet and kind. She looked nervous. "I need to tell you something," she said. Everyone turned to her. I worked for Garen 2 years ago," she began. "I cleaned his cabin. One day I found something strange, an old necklace in a locked box. When I asked him, he shouted at me, said it was cursed." She looked at Rena. "It was the same necklace your mother used to wear." Rena gasped. Her fingers touched her chest where the necklace used to be. "That was hers," she whispered. "Mama's," Lana nodded. "I think he took it from the fire." The room fell silent. Elias's eyes narrowed. Why would he take a necklace from a burning home? Unless he was there when it started. Rena's father stood. "Do we have to find Garen now?" But Elias raised his hand. "There's one place he may have gone. Somewhere deep in the woods. There's an old hunting cabin, his father's place. He goes there when he wants to hide." Rena stood up too. "I'm going." Her father looked at her in surprise. "It's dangerous." "I don't care," she said. "He has the answers. I need to know what really happened." Her voice was soft but full of fire. Elias nodded. "Then we go together. All 3 of us." They packed food, warm clothes, and a lantern. Elias led the way. Snow crunched under their boots as they walked deeper into the forest. Trees stood like silent watchers. The wind whispered old secrets. After 2 hours, they saw smoke rising through the trees. The cabin. They moved quietly. Elias held up a hand. "Wait." From inside the cabin, they heard angry voices. "Garen," and another man. "You said no one would remember," Garen shouted. "You told me she died." The second man's voice was lower. "Then why is she back?" "She's remembering," Garen said. "She saw me. What if she tells them?" "We can't let that happen," the man growled. "You know what to do." Elias's eyes widened. "There's someone else involved." He whispered. Rena's heart pounded. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked beneath her foot. Crack! Inside the cabin, silence. Then, Garen's voice roared. "Someone's out there!" The door slammed open. Garen stood there, red-faced, holding an axe. Elias stepped forward. "It's over, Garen. We know everything." Rena stood beside him. "You were there the night my family burned. You took the necklace. You lied for years." Garen's hand shook. "You don't understand." "Then tell us," her father said, and then Garen dropped the axe. He fell to his knees in the snow. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted the money. I didn't know the fire would spread so fast. I didn't know the little girl would survive." Tears ran down his face. Behind him, the second man stepped out of the shadows. Elias recognized him. It was Mayor Holtz, the village leader. "You," Elias whispered. "You helped him?" The mayor's face twisted. "Her father had land. We wanted it. The fire solved that problem." Rena looked at both men, her fists clenched. "You destroyed my life. For land?" the mayor sneered. "And you should have stayed gone." But before he could step forward, Elias pulled out a small recorder. "I heard everything," he said calmly. "And now, so will the world." The mayor froze. So did Garen. Justice had just begun, and in Rena's eyes, a fire burned, not of hate, but of truth. The wind howled through the trees, but the forest was no longer silent. Elias, Rena, and her father stood firm in front of the old cabin. Garen still knelt in the snow, shaking. Beside him, Mayor Holtz looked pale, trapped. Elias held up the small recorder again. "This recording will go to the police," he said. "The truth will finally be heard." "No," the mayor said, taking a step forward. "You can't do this. You don't understand the damage it'll bring to this village." Rena interrupted, her voice cold and clear. "You weren't thinking about the village when you burned down our home." Her father nodded slowly. "We lost everything. My wife, my child. I thought both were gone. And now I find my daughter alive, and the truth finally coming out." Garen looked up at Rena, his voice small. I didn't want to kill anyone. I just wanted money. Holt said no one would get hurt. But someone did, Rena said softly. A little girl was left to freeze in the cold, alone. That girl was me. Elias stepped forward. You both will answer for what you've done. Suddenly, sirens sounded in the distance. The police had arrived. Minutes later, officers surrounded the cabin. Garin and Holtz were handcuffed. As they were led away, Garin turned to look at Rena one last time. I'm sorry, he whispered. But Rena didn't answer. She simply turned away. Some wounds were too deep for words. Back in the village, the news of the arrests spread like fire. The villagers were shocked. Many had followed the mayor blindly. Many had feared Garin. But now, everything was different. Elias gave the recording to the police. The necklace found in Garin's cabin was returned to Rena. She held it in her hands like a lost piece of her soul. Her father took her home. But this time, home was warm. The fire in the fireplace danced. The smell of soup filled the air. A soft blanket wrapped around her shoulders. And for the first time in many years, she felt safe. That night, as snow fell softly outside the window, Elias visited. He handed her a small notebook. It's your mother's journal, he said. I found it in the church basement. She gave it to me for safekeeping, in case anything happened. Rena opened the first page. It was her mother's handwriting. To my daughter, if you ever read this, know that you are brave. Know that no matter what happens, you are never alone. Let truth be your light. Rena's eyes filled with tears. She looked at her father, then, Elias, I want to help others like me, she said. No child should suffer like I did. No one should be left alone in the snow. Elias smiled gently. Then that will be your strength. Years passed. Rena grew stronger, wiser. She built a shelter for orphaned and abused children. She told her story, not for pity but for hope, and people listened. The villagers, once silent, now stood with her. And every year, on the night of the fire, she lit a candle outside the church, for her mother, for lost voices, for justice. As the flame flickered in the cold wind, Pastor Elias stood beside her. Your voice, he said, once frozen in silence, is now heard by many. Rena looked up at the stars, her heart full, because sometimes a whisper in the snow can become a roar in the world, and sometimes the quietest voice becomes the one that changes everything.